Hello everybody, this is Storm back with another video, and today we're going to be looking at the SADL Season 2 Legacy Division draft grades. A quick little update about Season 2. We just wrapped up drafting and the free trade period for both divisions. Obviously, we're doing the draft grades for the Legacy Division today. I'm working on the draft grades for the Newcomer Division as well. I plan on having both of those out within the next few days. Um, Hopefully before any matches are played. If not, maybe a couple matches are played or something, doesn't really matter. We're just going to get these draft grades out as soon as possible. So, obviously, doing Legacy Division right now. We're going to start the video off with a quick rundown. Basically, what's going into the grading process, what I'm looking at with draft grades. I'm drafting all 12 teams that are currently in the SADL Legacy Division based off of what they drafted and also any changes that they made during the 24-hour free trade or grace period, whatever you want to call it. Kind of goes by different names. The things we're going to be looking for. First thing is going to be synergy and cores, basically just how well the team fits together. Just a quick glance and basically just saying, yep, this team just overall looks good. It makes sense. It kind of feels like it works, right? Next thing we'll be looking at is speed control. Very important in draft. Really, you just want to have fast Pokemon. You want to have fast top end speed. You also want to have good speed diversity. You don't want to have any big gaps in your speed tiers. Like you don't want to have like a 110 and then the next fastest Pokemon is like a 70. You want to have some Pokemon that are in between there. It's going to help you, just makes it easier, gives you more diversity. Hazard control, obviously, setting and removing hazards. That's very important in competitive Pokemon in general. Another thing is offensive diversity, just making sure that your offensive options are very diverse. Um, you know, both good blend of special attackers, physical attackers, setup sweepers, wall breakers. Fast threats, slower, bulkier, kind of tankier threats. Just make sure you have that good offensive blend. You're not just loaded up on one side, or you don't have that blend. So the more offensive diversity you have, the better. Same thing with defensive diversity. Do you have good physical walls, good special walls? Do you have Pokemon of good different defensive utilities, stuff like that? Not just I have you know three special walls. That's it. So looking for that diversity. Better blends in your drafting. Last Next part is support Pokemon. Kind of just a general term. Just do you have good support Pokemon? Do you have things that can they can provide status, maybe wish support, like a cleric, anything like that that's kind of different, encore, stuff like that. Having that as well gives you bonus points because, it's very easy just to draft a bunch of offensive or defensive Pokemon, but really trying to get the Pokemon that have a lot of diversity and a lot of different things they can do is really good. And then lastly is Terra Captains. Do you have good Terra Captains? Did you draft mons that were good Terra Captains, or did you make the Pokemon you drafted, Terra Captains? If you have one Pokemon that's a really, really good Terra Captain, and then you draft another one and you made the one that isn't a really good Terra Cap, the one that's the worst Terra Captain, should I say, your Terra Captain, it's like, that's a negative point, negative thing. You want to make sure you're utilizing the best Terra Pokemon on your team. So yeah, that's what we're going to be looking at. Those are kind of the basic guidelines. It's not really a rubric. It's just what I'm looking at mainly when I'm looking at people's drafts. So we're going to get straight into it. We're going in draft order. Um, First slide will basically have the team, and the second slide will have a little breakdown of what I think about each team and what went to the grading. So we're going to start off with the Anchorage Bear Ticks. Give them a little B, as you can see their team real quick. Tapu Koko, they're tier 1. Iron Moth, they're tier 2. Mew, Crocodile, tier 3s. Conkeldurr, Arctozolt, tier 4. Mega Bombasnow, Rabombi, tier 5s. Jellicent Tauros, tier 6. Walrein, they're tier 7. So let's get into this real quick. Pros, obviously, they have great synergy with snow and electric terrain. As you can see, they do have the Mega Bombasnow with the Arctozolt and the Tapu Koko with the Iron Moth. All those Pokemon, they really, really mesh well together. Arctozolt actually benefiting from both the terrain and the snow. And Iron Moth obviously being a really good snow abuser, not snow abuser, electric terrain abuser, being able to benefit from that. So a lot of good synergy there. I do like to see that. pretty solid speed distribution. Tapu Koko being very, very fast. Iron Moth having really good speed. Mew, Crocodile, decent speed. Rabambi also being pretty fast. Tauros, and then you have some slower Pokemon. There is a little speed gap. Really, there is not really anything like that 80-ish range, but it's not that big of a gap. We do have some stuff in like the 60s and 70s. So really, really good speed distribution. Also, a great Terra Captain choice for Bombi. One of the better Terra eligible mods. Also has really good web support to help with that speed control. Cons: severe rock weakness. I think there's something like 5 rock weak Pokemon on this team, and there's only 2 resist. Obviously, so having a rock weakness that big to 5 Pokemon can really limit you with team building because you're more than likely going to be bringing like at least 2 Pokemon that are weak to rock. And being weak to rock in particular is really bad because that means you are weak to stealth rocks. It gives you an over reliance on either A, hazard removal, or B, heavy duty boots. So it was going to restrict your team building a lot. I think it's a very big negative. Also, hazard control is not great. I believe there's only 2 defoggers on this team. Yeah, so not even great hazard control, which only amplifies that rock weakness. Um, Only 1 fairy resist to having 2 fairy weaknesses, and there's no ground immunity. Now that I believe there is 1 ground resist and 3 Pokemon weak to ground with only 1 ground resist. Yeah, yeah, exactly. So that's also a very big negative here. So I think there's some very glaring weaknesses in this team. Overall, it's not bad. I gave it a B. That's a very respectable grade because it does have great synergy, good Terra Captain. I think it's a fun team that's going to do a lot of cool stuff, but it does have these very big glaring weaknesses that were not fixed in the free trade period. So I have to give it a B overall. Still a very solid team from Wumples. He's the coach of the Anchorage Beartics. Then moving on to our second team, we're looking at the House of Mouse. Hit him with a B minus grade. As you can see, their team real quick. I'm not gonna go through and name off every Pokemon. I know you guys can see it. Um, Real quick, just getting into the breakdown. Pros: great rain synergy. As you can see, this is a rain team. Having the Pelipper, the Basculegion, the Floatzel, even the Aegislash benefiting a little bit from the rain. Landorus benefits a little bit from the rain. Mega Sceptile actually has great synergy with rain, being a lightning rod user. Same thing with Manectric. So a lot of good rain synergy. I like seeing that. Great top end speed, really coming from the Swift Swim user. Mega Sceptile being really fast. Basculegion using Swift Swim. Screamtail has really good speed. So a lot of top end speed. Overall, pretty good speed distribution as well. Um, great Terra Captain choices. I think Floatzel, especially in rain, is a phenomenal Terra Captain. Hitmonchan's really good Terra Captain. Manectric is a phenomenal Terra Captain, one of the better tier 7s, especially as a Terramon. And then pretty good hazard removal as well. We have some defoggers, we have some rapid spinners. So yeah, really, really good hazard removal. Poor some cons though, poor hazard diversity. Even though the hazard removal is good, only having rocks on your team, that does kind of suck, right? Like, rocks are good. Obviously, they're generally considered to be one of the best hazards, if not the best hazard, because they hit a lot of things. But not being able to set up spikes, so things that are like for example, Aegislash is just resisting rocks. So being able to get up spikes and damage Aegislash more is really good. Especially because Aegislash isn't really going to be wearing boots. So any sort of spikes you can get up is usually free damage on Aegislash, just to whittle it down. So not having like spikes, not having toxic spikes as well, so you can't use that. Not having sticky webs, which sticky webs is not like the end all be all for hazards, but obviously just only having rocks, generally not a good thing. You want better hazard diversity. Also, a very big fairy weakness with having, was it one, two, three Pokemon weak to Fairy, only 1 resistance being Aegislash. That's not a good thing. No grounded poison also really sucks. You always want a grounded poison on your team because it helps deal with toxic spikes very easily. You can just come in, absorb the toxic spikes. You don't have to waste hazard removal on it. And also not great intermediate speed. I did say earlier they did have really, really good tie-in speed, and their speed distribution isn't terrible, but they don't have a lot of really good intermediate speed. I believe they kind of have Manectric or Landerson card, I think is like 101 speed. And I think the next Pokemon is like in the 70s. So they have a pretty big gap with their speed there, especially outside of weather. So overall, I gave this a B minus. It is a really good team with a lot of synergy, but it does have very big glaring weaknesses. Once again, similar to the Anchorage Beartix draft. Um, it's not a bad draft. B minus is still a very respectable grade. I think they did a good job with drafting. They being Yeehaw Ha Yee, who is the coach of the House of Mouse, but overall could be better. Feel like there's just too many glaring weaknesses. Moving on to our third person in draft order, we have the Toronto Tyrantrums, coached by Kesta, a newcomer to the SADL and also brand new to the Legacy division. And I gave this an A plus. I think this is the best draft in the Legacy division. Great hazard control, a lot of hazard setters, a lot of hazard removers. Um, good rapid spinners, good defoggers, able to set rocks, spikes, um, toxic spikes, even no sticky webs. But other than that, outside of that, just phenomenal. Have a lot of hazard setters, have a lot of hazard removal. Just lots of good diverse Pokemon. Deoxys Speed obviously being an extremely diverse Pokemon. Quaquaval being a really good draft Pokemon. Scissor being fairly diverse. Diancie diverse. Appleton, Sandaconda, they can all kind of get away with it. Just a really, really good draft. Reminds me a lot of, I believe this is SPL Season 1 Joey. His draft, I believe, had Quack, Scissor, Thunderous, and Overclock. I believe were all in his draft. And he might have had Appleton as well. So this is a very, very similar draft to his. And obviously that draft won him, a draft league. So, you copy what's best, right? Very good Terra choices as well. Diancie's a really good Terra captain. But Delphox is also really good, so I can't really, not going to take away points from that. Very good speed distribution, very good type synergy, just a very overall really, really good draft, right? It's an A plus. For cons, I said none. I really couldn't find one. Maybe the biggest con is electric. I think that's maybe the biggest flaw in this entire draft is they drafted electric. I feel like there are probably better sevens on the board, especially considering well, I don't know. If this was depending on when they drafted it on the snake, it actually was probably one of the last tier sevens. But obviously, there's a lot of tier sevens. There's a lot of pretty good ones. I feel like there definitely were better options, but like at the end of the day, it's your tier seven. Um, when 10 of your Pokemon are really, really good and you've drafted this well, you can be excused to have maybe not the best tier seven and it not really have that big of a negative impact on your draft grade. So very, very good draft from Kesta. So next up, we have the Chicago Toros, coached by Tanner. I gave this is another B grade. Real quick, we're just going to jump right into our pros and cons. Are basically the details for our drafting. Pros: great hazard removal. Really and truthfully, Iron Treasure is a great rapid spinner. Cleaver, Volcanion, both good defoggers. Hitmontop, great rapid spinner. I actually do not know if Swoobat gets defog. It might, but obviously great hazard removal. All those Pokemon are phenomenal hazard removals. Different types of hazard removal as well. Having two rapid spinners, two defoggers. Good Pokemon diversity and support options. Pokemon like Treads, Cleaver, Grimstar is a phenomenal support Pokemon. Bastiodon, has a lot of different options it can do. Hitmontop being, an intimidate and rapid spinner, plus having things like fake out. Ninetales obviously being a sunsetter. A lot of diversity. I do like that in this draft. And very solid overall speed distribution. Dragapult obviously having great top end speed. Treads having solid speed. Swoobat having decent speed. And then some good 80s and 90s in the mix. Mega Venusaur, Cleaver, Volcanion, Ninetales I think is like base 100. Hitmontop I think is like base 90. So really good speed diversity overall. Even though there's a bit of a gap between Swoobat and Dragapult, but there's not a lot of Pokemon that have that speed that can fit in that gap. Anyways, Dragapult's just that fast. So really good speed diversity. However, though some cons, there is a severe ground weakness on this team, and that is it's one of the most common types. It's one of the strongest types. Very easy to spam type with Earthquake. And having only one immunity is not, and that immunity being Swoobat, which is not a very common Pokemon or like a great Pokemon you're not bringing all the time, big negative. This team is very, very ground weak, albeit two of the ground weaknesses are Terra Captains, which does help. Having that huge ground weakness does suck, and only having one immunity and not even a resist. There's not another resist either. Having one immunity, it's a very, very big negative. I had to really, really kind of just drop a lot of uh, I think it's the biggest negative impact on this team so far. There's a lack of hazard diversity, really only having rocks. Treads can only set rocks, I think, right? Yeah, I don't think it can set spikes. I should know that I had treads last season. Bastiodon can only set rocks, and then Cleaver obviously can only set rocks as well. So not great hazard diversity, not the end of the world, but once again, no spikes, no T spikes. And also one little note too, could have drafted a better tier 7. This team is kind of a pseudo Sun team. It does have the Ninetales and the Venusaur, which can be chlorophyll pre Mega. There were pretty good options for a chlorophyll user in tier 7. I really feel like there could have been a better option personally. I'm not sure exactly what's available, but there's definitely better tier 7s that fit well with this team. Getting Sea King is just very random. It doesn't fit well in this team. It's not overall a good Pokemon. It's not even really a good tier 7. I feel like there was a better tier 7 option, especially something that could use the sun a little bit more, whether it be a chlorophyll user or like some kind of fire type. Something stronger, I think, could have done better than Sea King. Overall, like I said, it's a good. I have a lot of good things to say about this one. Like I said, very good speed distribution, very good diversity. I like the team. Just that ground weakness is tough. It's going to be a very, very difficult thing for this team to deal with later down the road. And then there are, of course, some other negatives as well. Still very good draft with a B grade for the Chicago Toros and Tanner. Next up, the Norwich Neuverns, coached by Scorpithan, one of our new coaches, getting a B plus grade here. Jump in real quick, look at this. Pros, great sand synergy. As you can see, it was a sand team. Um, with the Hippowdon, Excadrill, Stoutland, and Houndstone using a lot of sand setters. A lot of sand abusers. So there's good sand synergy there. I will say there's not a lot of steel types, if any, right? Yeah, no steel types. Blossom fits kind of weird. I don't really hate things like Starmie or even Volcarona. Um, on sand teams. I think they actually do have a place because they kind of help mitigate those weaknesses and do different things. But so good sand synergy, not the best. Solid speed distribution, great offensive diversity, especially outside of sand. That's one thing I do like about this team is that it is a sand team and it has a lot of sand. But Chinpao, Volcarona, Komodo, and Amorous, they're going to do their thing outside of sand. They don't need sand to be good. Even like Houndstone, an Excadrill, they can be good outside of stand. Stoutland, that's not a terrible Pokemon outside of stand either. You can run you can run sand, and you cannot run sand and still field a very good team overall. So not bad at all. Some cons though, hazard control isn't the greatest. Um, only rocks available on this team. Another team that's limited to just rocks. Um, and only two spinners, so no defogger. So obviously dealing with actually, does Volcarona get defog? I could be wrong about this. I can't remember if Volcarona gets defog in national decks. If it does get defog, then obviously the situation is a little bit better. But as of right now, yeah, I don't think any of these get defog. So just only having those spinners, really and truthfully, that's a very big negative. You don't want that. It limits your hazard removal because it means you can get spin blocked. It means it's harder for you to clear screens. You can't clear screens with rapid spin. You have to have the fog. So that kind of sucks as well, having only rapid spinners as your hazard removal. And also, both of them being offensive Pokemon as well can limit you somewhat. It's not the end of the world. Offensive rapid spinners are there all the time, but can be a little limiting. Kind of just messes with your team building and diversity, restricts you a little bit. Some teams only have one. We saw teams last season that only had like one or two removers, and it was like, okay, you have to bring that Pokemon every game, or if you don't, then your opponent just gets free hazards. Or they say, okay, well, they have to bring one of either this remover or one of these two removers. Okay, I plan for them because you only have those removers. So right? It's kind of one of the not having a lot of hazard removers really has that negative impact. Another thing I put too is arguably too reliant on sand. Um, Having four Pokemon dedicated to sand and three of them being sand rush users, albeit very different with the way they work. Excadrill obviously being like a more tradition, being like one of the best sand rush users. Houndstone and Stoutland being very different with their typings is very allows for some diversity with the sand rush. But having three of these Pokemon being sand rush users, and then having the Hippowdon having to be the sand abuser does limit. I will say limit this team a little bit. I did say earlier that they can work outside of sand and work outside of sand very well, but it's not. I feel like this team can be very restricted sometimes because it wants to use the sand as much as possible because it has that build for it. Also, a severe fire weakness, pretty big thing here for this team. Really and truthfully, only having the Starmie and the Komo to deal with fire. Chinpao, Excadrill, Galvantula, and even Blossom all weak to fire. Houndstone with its fluffy ability is also weak to fire. So if you're ever using Houndstone outside of the sand, you're more than likely going to be using Fluffy over Sand Rush. So then guess what? That makes it also weak to fire. So some pretty big negatives with that as well. Fire being a very common offensive typing can do a lot of damage. You're not going to have the best answers to it. Como being mainly the biggest defensive check to fire. Starmie can be very bulky and does have access to recover, but yeah, having that many Pokemon weak to fire can be, especially your top end Pokemon, both Excadrill and Chin Pao being two of your best offensive threats being weak to fire, definitely not a good thing. And then no grounded poison. Yeah, I mean, no grounded poison sucks. One of your rapid spinners, thankfully, is immune to toxic spike, so it can come in and spin without having to get toxic or having to rely on boots to do that. Starmie would have to have boots or it would get poisoned itself. But yeah, having no grounded poison also a pretty big negative. I do overall like this team. I think it has a lot of great synergy, like I said before. A lot of great offensive diversity. This Pokemon has a lot of offensive pressure. Defensively, it's not the worst, but it's not the greatest either. Hippowdon and Amorous Como is pretty much going to be the backbone of this team defensively. Starmie and Houndstone do have some defensive prowess as well, but that's going to be your but it's going to be your main defensive core right there. But a lot of offensive diversity. Just has some slight negatives. Obviously, the fire weakness is not good. Anytime you have an overwhelming weakness, just makes it that much easier to team, to build against you. Makes it that more restrictive for you in team building as well. Not great hazard control, no grounded poison. Some decently, impactful negatives. Overall, good draft. I like a lot of what this draft does. I think B plus is very fair. Next up, we have the New York Munchlax, coached by Manny. I gave this team an A grade for pretty good reasons. Good speed distribution. Zamazenta is very fast. Pokemon like Kilowattrel is another fast Pokemon. Scolipede, great speed. Ogerpon, and then we have some really good middle speed Pokemon like Obstagoon and Mega Altaria. Um, and then obviously like Milotic has a pretty decent speed tier, and then some slower, even some really good slow Pokemon. This team has a lot of potential for Trick Room. I'll say that right now. The Claydol with the Melmetal and the Alolan Executor and Camerupt, all very good Trick Room users. So that's be very interesting to see from this team. I like that. I like that speed distribution. Very good, pretty good hazard control. Defoggers, rapid spinners. They can get it done. Solid hazard setters as well. Camerupt, Claydol, Skull Pete says hazards a lot. Ogerpon having access to spikes. Cons, pretty major ice weakness here. Having what four, what one, two, five Pokemon weak to ice is very, very, very problematic. Obviously, two of those are Terra Captain, so it does limit it a little bit. Two resist. One of them being Milotic, though, it actually is a pretty big negative. The reason for is that means that it is weak to freeze dry. So freeze dry kind of cleans up against this team. Unfortunately, that's by far its biggest negative. And I do feel like this team could use one more hazard remover. Mega Altaria and Claydol being your only hazard removal definitely could use one more. I really feel like you want 2 to 3 more on the 3 side. You want to have a decent amount. I mean, that's really like a fourth of your team has access to hazard removal. It's a very, very small tweak because, like I said, the hazard control it does have pretty decent hazard control. This team does, having two hazard removers who do two different things. One's a defogger, one's a rapid spinner, and having access to all the hazards that it does. It does have good hazard control, but one more hazard remover would do it really good. And obviously, that ice weakness really drags this team down. I considered it giving it a lower grade, but I really do like what this team is doing outside of that. I feel like the positives of this team are really, really positive. I really like it. Has a lot of cool stuff going on, very diverse. As you can see, I forgot to actually mention this great defensive profile and diversity. Yeah, this is a very diverse team. Very good defensive Pokemon. Zamazenta, Melmetal, Megalteria, Milotic, Claydol. Very, very good defensive Pokemon that do a lot of different things. Very, very, very good draft with the pros. The ice weakness, obviously, that's the big negative there. Moving on, we have yours truly, Baltimore Bullet Punches. Uh, I'm not gonna lie, trying to be objective with your own draft is hard. Not only do I say that because obviously it's my draft, but when you draft a team, you know what your team is doing. You drafted these Pokemon with a purpose. You know all the ins and outs of your team, why you pick these things, what you want to do with them in game, how they're going to look in certain matchups. So you understand the intricacies of your team more than somebody else would. When I'm grading these teams, I'm just looking at 11 Pokemon on a sheet and I'm kind of checking boxes. Okay, they have good speed. Yep. They have hazard removal. Yep. They have, good offense, good defense. Yep. They have 4 or 5 Pokemon weak to this type. That's not good. They don't have a grounded poison. That's the things I'm looking for when I'm looking at teams. I don't understand all the intricacies and all the plans, or maybe some things that I'm going to miss. So I will say grading your own team is a little hard, or is different, especially when you're trying to be objective, because I know what my team is supposed to do. I know what I want my team to do, and I can't say that for other people because I'm not them. But I give myself an A grade. I'll go over that real quick. Pros, obviously, good electric terrain synergy, having 3 Pokemon that benefit from it, and having the Pincurchin there as well. Um, Great hazard control, defogger, mortal spin on Glamora, defog on Rotom Heat, tidy up on Cinccino, defog on Altaria, rapid spin on Fortress. Glamora and Fortress having great hazards, access to hazards, and then Pincurchin, I believe, also having spike. So overall, really, really good hazard control, having access to a lot of hazard removers and hazard setters. Very solid speed distribution all around. Have some like 80s in there, some 90s. Pretty decent speed control. Probably intermediate speed could use some work, and good defensive synergy. I like defensive synergy. I'm a big, bulky, balance type guy. That's why I like Mega Scissor. That's why I like Primarina. Rotom Heat also fits that sort of category. Altaria is very bulky. Fortress is very bulky. So I do like bulky Pokemon. So I always should keep my defensive synergy high. Probably the biggest con for this team is speed control relying on Core Drive. My fastest Pokemon is Iron Valiant. And obviously has a decent speed with 116, but its speed is better because the reason why it can be such a fast, threatening Pokemon is because of Quark Drive. Being able to raise its speed one stage without having to use a choice scarf, making it sort of artificially inflating its speed in a way. I feel like that could be a negative because I don't have naturally fast Pokemon. I think every team drafted a Pokemon faster than Iron Valiant space speed. I'm pretty sure that happened. I have to go back and double check. But yeah, that's probably the biggest negative for my team. Same thing with Iron Leaves. It has a decent speed stat, but once again, it's getting a lot of its speed boost from Quark Drive. So being either reliant on booster energy or terrain can be a very negative aspect for my team. I think that's by far the biggest con. The thing that would stop me from giving myself an A+ by far. Next up, the Wiltshire War Turtles, coached by Notorious Pip. Here with an A- grade. I really like this draft a lot. We'll talk about it right here. Solid psychic terrain synergy. Tapu Lele plus Mega Gallade. Hoopa Unbound. Even Driftblim uses psychic terrain pretty good. Um, Reggie still is like actually a kind of underrated terrain user because of its access. I mean, it's having great bulk and being able to use like Psychic Seed to further boost that. I think that's kind of an underrated thing. Um, Good hazard diversity overall. I think having like spikes from Ogre Pond, having access to rocks, Poison Spike, Toxic Spikes, not Poison Spikes. Pretty good overall. I think it's really, really solid. And also good speed diversity, right? You have some top end speed with Zygarde that's pretty fast. Um, Urban Farflame, Mega Late, obviously having a decent speed tier. Lele hitting solid mid ground. Rotom Wash as well. Drift Blim, Viper's actually deceptively fast. So Hoopa down with that 80 speed tier. So really good speed diversity. Some cons though, definitely could use better hazard removal diversity. Not having a rapid spinner because Miltank doesn't get rapid spin. So you're being very reliant on defog. I think that's obviously a negative aspect. Can be a negative aspect because defog can be blocked by different things. Can be taunted. It removes your own hazards. So, if you want to keep your hazards up, you'd have to remove your hazards with defog instead of rapid spin, or you can just remove your opponent's hazards. And I also feel like this team could benefit from at least one more psychic terrain abuser. Um, there are some unburdened users. They're not the best unburdened users. This team actually originally had Hitmonlee, and then it got dropped for I think Reggie still. Hitmonlee's a phenomenal Terra captain in this league, being able to Terra, being able to have access to that unburden. I think that's a huge miss for Phil. I'm surprised he dropped it. Also, no shell smashes, right? No Poltergeist, no Omastar. Omastar's Terra is actually able to use Terra. Same thing with Barbarical. Those are really, really good Terramons. No Armor Rouge or anything like that. So I feel like that was a missed opportunity to get some better synergy. Overall, the Psychic Terrain synergy is still good. I feel like it could be better. Also, actually, I will say this too. One negative aspect: having Zygarde 10%. I know it's not as reliant on extreme speed as regular Zygarde is, but having an extreme speed user on a team that does have a terrain user and very clearly has a terrain like wants to use terrain. I do feel like that is a bit of a negative. It's not the biggest thing because obviously if you're bringing Lele and Zygarde, don't bring extreme speed on your Zygarde, and Zygarde doesn't need extreme speed. But I do feel like that is a negative. It will mess with your team building sometimes because you might want to bring Lele and Zygarde on the same team, and you can't do that or you're going to be limited with that because Zygarde won't be able to extreme speed. But overall, very solid draft. I think A minus fits it very well. Has a lot of good things. Just has some pretty big, noticeable negatives that I feel like could have easily been fixed. Just enough to kind of stop it from being like a perfect draft. Next up, Dewey Duat, coached by Fiery Vortex. Very solid A grade here. I didn't have a lot to say about this team because it's just that it's good. It looks good. It feels like it's going to be a good team. Good Terra Captain picks, phenomenal Terra Captain picks, actually. Jolteon, Primate, Mr. Rhyme. Jolteon and Primate are great Terramons. All Creamy, even if he didn't Terra his Primate, All Creamy is also a very good Terramon. So very, very good Terra Captains. Solid hazard control, has some defoggers, has a rapid spinner as well. So doing good on the hazard control and good speed diversity, right? Jolteon, Megaladios, those have good Thunderous, very good speed, solid middle speed with Samurott and Chandelure, Mammothswine, Primate. I think hovers around the 90s, and then even some of your lower end speed, Mr. Rhyme, Alcremie, they have some of that 60, 70 base speed around that area. So that's obviously decent speed diversity as well. So very, very good, solid overall. It meshes well. This team really meshes well. I didn't put in the pros, but I feel like it has really good diversity and it just fits. Some cons. This team does have a bit of a fairy weakness. I believe one, two, three, four fairy weak Pokemon. There are two resist. Obviously, one of those being Chandelure, so it's not the best resist. But of course, one of the fairy weak Pokemon is a Terra Captain, so it's obviously able to Terra out of it. Probably the biggest negative on this thing, there is also a slight rock weakness, and I say slight because there are three rock weak Pokemon. Um, and there's really only one resist, or there's two resists, but obviously having three rock weak Pokemon does make your stealth rock weakness a little bit you have to play around that stealth rock weakness. You have to be on your P's and Q's with your hazard removal, or you have to use your boots. Just make sure you're not overexposing yourself to that stealth rock weakness. It's not a very big one. It's very small. Like I said, there's not a lot of flaws in this team, so I just kind of picked whatever flaws I could find. Very good. Get rid of that fairy weakness. Probably have like if one Pokemon was dropped for a better fairy resist, one of the fairy weak Pokemon for a resist. I think this would actually probably be a perfect, almost perfect draft. Probably be worthy of an A+. I think the fairy weakness by far is the biggest problem. Moving on to the Washington Wishmakers, coached by Jake. Very solid draft as well. Gave it an A. Great hazard control, good diversity and hazard setters. I like that a lot. Having a few rockers. Um, I actually do. No, he does have one spiker. He does have one spiker, which is Cactor. I just realized this team does not have the best hazard diversity. But it does have a lot of hazard setters, which is really good. Has a rapid spinner, has some defoggers, has a magic bounce user, which is really cool. So overall, very solid hazard control. Pretty good terrain synergy as well, using the Ndidi for Halucha and Iron Crown. Two very good hazard. I'm sorry, psychic terrain abusers. I will say having the Cacturn is a bit with the psychic terrain might be problematic because Cacturn wants to use Sucker Punch a lot of the time. So it'll be a little limited with that. It won't be the end of the world though. Overall, like I said, very good terrain synergy and just overall very diverse team. A lot of Pokemon do a lot of things. I know Jake is a very good drafter, very good battler. Unfortunately, he didn't make playoffs last year. That did kind of suck. But he's a great. I know he knows his stuff, so it's very. I expect him to have like a team like this that has a lot of really good diversity. Pokemon can do a lot of different things. Obviously, having a Rotom form, Galarian Corsola, Landorus, one of the most diverse Pokemon in the game. Mega Diancie, very diverse, especially from an offensive standpoint. Heatran, diverse. So very, very diverse. Umbreon also being a little diverse. I Probably the biggest con for this team is that obviously I feel like maybe a little bit more terrain synergy, but I also will say speed control will be very reliant on Halucha. This team does not have a lot of fast Pokemon. Obviously, my team wasn't the fastest either, which is why I gave it an A. And I feel like this team is going to be the same way. Obviously, you're only looking at one Pokemon. Yeah, one Pokemon that's above 110, that being Halucha. Mega Diancie, I think, sits at 110 even. Tentacruel, I think, is around 100, right? I think it's base 100 actually. Um, so you have Pokemon that do have like that higher end of the speed spectrum, but you don't have a lot of them. And at the end of the day, Halucha's you're going to be relying a lot on. I feel like you're going to be relying a lot on Halucha for that speed control. And unfortunately, it's going to have to rely on the Unburdened, similar to my team where I'm relying a lot on the Quark Drive for my speed control. So I do feel like that it will be a negative that will pigeonhole this team at some point in the future, um, especially because it doesn't have that many super fast teams. Like at least my team had um, Chinchino and Iron Valiant, both of them being above 110, and then also had Iron Leaves, which could use terrain to be fast. So I feel like this team, like I said, Halucha is going to be the cornerstone of this team's speed control, and I feel like that could be a problem later down the line. Not that it's like the most negative aspect about this team, or it's going to make this team a bad team. Next up, Minnesota Glow Kings. Gave them an A-. I was actually a little. This team was a little hard to grade because it looks really wonky. I'm not gonna lie. Looking at this team on paper, just a straight up like quick glance, it just like this team does so much goofy stuff. It's a fun team. I know Board Addict is capable of winning with this team. This is similar to how his team looked last season, to be completely honest. Very goofy, had a lot of different things going on, but it worked out. He's just a good coach. He's a great coach. Obviously, he was season one champion, right? So he knows what he's doing. Um, Very good team overall. I think like even though it looks goofy, it when you go through and you actually glance at it, it does its job, right? Very high top end speed, Spectrier, Mega Lopunny, Raikou, all very, very, very fast Pokemon. Solid hazard control, has defoggers, has some rapid spinners. Um, has access to spikes, toxic spikes, rocks, a little bit of everything. I don't know if a Selgor does a Selgor get sticky web? I don't remember if a Selgor gets sticky web. I know it gets access to spikes. So very solid hazard control. And just high offensive pressure, an insane amount of offensive pressure from this team. Spectre and Mega Lopunny just put a lot of pressure on Pokemon. Salamence with the Dragon Dance, Raikou, its speed, a Selgor speed, also very deceptive. Um, so a lot of offensive pressure coming off this team. Speed distribution could be better. Very high top end speed, yes, but you're kind of dealing with a lot of really fast Pokemon, and then you get the Salamence, and then there's a huge drop off in speed. Serena, hovers around the 70s. And that's about it. I can't remember exactly what a low. I think a low in Persian speed's like over 100 too. So really, you get to about Salamence, and you have a huge drop off in speed. So you don't have a lot of those middle intermediate speed Pokemon. You're kind of really just relying on all these super fast threats, which I mean you're going to be bringing them most games, so it's not a huge negative, which is why this is only an A minus. Part of the reason why this did get an A minus grade, because it's not a big, the end of the world for this team. Um, and then a little side note: overall, weaker. I believe some weaker low tier picks. Serena's obviously really good. I feel like a low in Persian will get some mileage, but a Selgor, not bad. I feel like there could have been first off a better Terra Captain choice. I feel like Serena was probably a better Terra Captain, but if not, you could have definitely. Your team's already fast. You don't need the speed from a Selgor. Definitely could have found a different Pokemon, especially if you want to make a good Terra Captain. Could have found something like that. Alolan Golem isn't too bad, but it doesn't have the greatest synergy with this team because you're not trapping a lot of things. This team doesn't need to trap stuff. And then obviously, Wish Cash. I mean, could have been a better could have been a better Pokemon than Wish Cash. It's not a terrible tier 7. Probably could have been a better one out there, I imagine. So overall, not the biggest fan of the lower tier picks. I feel like they could have been better. Overall, very good draft. A minus grade, obviously. Still really solid. Just feel like that was something that could have been worked on for this team. Just having some better Terramons, better low tier picks. Next up, our final pick, well, in draft order, would have been our final pick, our 12th overall pick, was the New Jersey Jinx, coached by Brady. Solid draft grade with a B plus. Obviously, good rain synergy. Politoed, Beartic, Mega Swampert all use the rain really good. Rotom can use it a little bit. Ferrothorn benefits from it. So pretty good rain synergy. Good hazard control as well. Having Ferrothorn being able to set out spikes and rocks. Hatterene with Magic Bounce as well. That's really good to kind of deter hazard setting. Swampert gets rocks, Terrakion gets rocks. So overall, good hazard control and good speed distribution outside of the weather. Shaman Sky being so fast outside of weather. Salazzle, same thing. Terrakion having a pretty decent speed tier. Hydreigon having a very solid intermediate speed tier. Same thing with Rotom. Girafarig hovers around that area as well. And then obviously your Pokemon like Beartic having more of the lower end of the speed spectrum. So very good speed distribution. Some cons though, only 2 defoggers for hazard removal. Obviously, Hatterene is going to help a lot with hazard control, but once any match that Hatterene isn't being brought, or if hazards do go up, whether it be through something like a mold breaker Pokemon or just a good play by the opponent, getting hazards up when Hatterene is on the field, you are limited to having 2 defoggers as your hazard removal. Um, and they're not the greatest. Rotom and Hydreigon, I mean, they're not bad hazard removal, but you are limited with that. You don't have a rapid spinner to clean up those hazards as well. So I do feel like that is a con. Once hazards go up, they're going to be a lot harder to get off the field. I also feel like better tier 1 options. Not gonna lie. I mean, obviously having the last pick does limit your tier 1 options a lot, but I feel like Shaman Sky was not the way to go, especially when you consider how many good Pokemon were just left on the board at the time. I don't have access to the draft board right now. I'm not going to pull it up, but there were some really good tier 1s remaining. Um, you know, Iron, not Iron. I was gonna say Iron Tusk. Great Tusk was still available. Um, I'm trying to think. I think Mega Mawile was still available. That's a pretty decent one as well. Um, so there was really good tier 1s available. I feel like Shaman Sky was not the best choice here, especially because I feel like you could have got a tier 1 with better synergy. Iron Bundle was available. Iron Bundle, I mean, it's not obviously it's in draft. It's kind of shown that it's not the most reliable, but it does have great synergy with the rain. And it also is faster than Shaman Sky. I feel like Iron Bundle would have gone well with this team as well. I feel like just better tier 1 options. Not the end of the day. And also, this team could become a little too reliant on rain. And it's mainly because you're going to want to use, Mega Swampert does have some use outside of rain, but it doesn't have the best use outside of rain. And Beartic is going to want to use rain as well. So I feel like you're going to want to use rain. And because this team does have that good oh, I went too far back. Even though this team does have good rain synergy, it also doesn't have the best rain abusers. There definitely were better available rain abusers. So I feel like this team could get into a situation where it wants to use rain and its rain isn't always going to be the best option. So I feel like that could cause some team building structures, especially later in the season once people have gotten used to each other's strategies, right? Games have been played, people have been watching other people play, and they're observing, play styles and preferences and stuff like that. I feel like this team having this reliance on rain, but also not having the best use of rain, could very well have a negative impact at some point during the season. Overall, it is still a good draft. I like a lot of the Pokemon. This team can function outside of rain. I just think it'll struggle more than some other teams that that are using like terrain or weather to their advantage. We have a lot of teams who are using something like that. We have a few sand teams, we have one sand team. We have a snow team with electric terrain. We have another electric terrain team, two psychic terrain teams. I feel like those teams, the terrain is just it amplifies what's already there. I feel like this team is going to want to use the rain a lot more, and I feel like it's not going to do the best at utilizing the rain. Still a very solid overall draft. I gave it a B plus. That's not a bad grade at all. I do like what this team is doing. Just feel like it could be a little bit better. Primarily, like I really feel like if Shaman Sky was Iron Bundle, this team would probably be like an A. Honestly, I really feel like that's kind of the biggest issue I have with the team is that just Seamus Guy could have been switched out to a tier one with better synergy with this team, to be honest. So overall, I feel like that one switch would make this team so much better. That being said, that will wrap up our legacy coach draft grades. Like I said, I'm working on the newcomer draft grades. Hopefully, I can get them done pretty soon. Try to get these out maybe the day after I get this one up. Like I said, trying to get them out before get matches start. So that way people can just kind of see that and it'll feel like, it's still before the season has really, really began. So far, as we're recording this, no matches have been played. But obviously once those start happening, I'll be recording my own videos, I'll be recording my match reviews, all that fun stuff that we did last season. We'll be back at it again. So yeah, looking forward to that. I hope everybody who's watching this y'all having a good day. Hope y'all stay safe. If you guys have any opinions, let me know, right? Put them down in the comments. Say, no, I really feel like this team, this team was actually garbage. You're wrong, Storm. They suck. You're an idiot. Or, hey, no, don't stop hating on little bro. He actually built a really good team. That's the best draft team I've ever seen. Let me know. Tell me if I'm an idiot or not. Either way, though, I'll see you guys in the next video. Like I said, be safe, everybody. See y'all around. Have a good day.